I think what's also really important, not only for allies, but everyone in general, just take this as an opportunity to learn something and to educate yourself, and to also uneducate yourself in some ways.
Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Relationships Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe.
And I'm Sophie Jaffe.
And we are here for you again today, bringing another story related to the racial inequality, Black Lives Matter sort of issues that are just flooding us right now. We're also going to combine that with Pride Month this episode. And so we've got an amazing friend of ours, and you're going to hear from him, and we really, really love him. You're going to absolutely love this conversation. We're also going to cover our reviews of the week.
Yeah.
So, Soph, you got my drum roll? Thank you. All right. This one comes from Josh Christ. Empowering, insightful, and ... Whether you're already deep into your journey of authentic health and wellness or just getting started organizing your lifestyle around a higher vibration, this is a must-listen podcast for you. Dr. Adi and Sophie do an incredible job leading conversations that cover the entire range of mental, emotional, spiritual, and cultural changes we all face, learning to navigate the transition to an awakened life that lights us up. Highly recommended listening and subscribing. Wow.
Beautiful.
Thank you for that, Josh.
Thank you.
Don't forget to contact us. First of all, I love how relevant this is to the conversation we're having today. But don't forget to contact us, Josh. Let us know that we read your review, and you will get our incredible package. Are they going to get Hydrating Dream in this package?
Josh, you let us know what you want to try from Philosophy, and we will hook it up. If you want our newest Hydrating Dream, which is a dream for summertime. Really easy, single serving. We just launched it. It's so exciting. So you can just add it to a water bottle or, of course, to smoothies and anything else. But it's a great travel item when we can travel again. Great for all ages. So yeah, we're really excited about that. So just let us know what you'd like to try from Philosophy, and we will get it to you along with some other Ignited goodies.
Love it.
And I have a quote that I found yesterday that just hit home. It's from f.e.marie, and it says, "And that's how change happens. When you sit with the uncomfortable. When you scream so loud they don't have any other option but to listen. When you stand up, when you fight. And perhaps this path has not been anything we expected, but everything we ever needed."
I love that. It relates so much to the conversations people are having right now, which is like, well, why does this have to be uncomfortable? And why does it have to be...
Why do they have to make noise?
Why do they have to like scream and break stuff?
Windows. Why are they breaking windows?
And we can get into the conversation of which groups are doing what, but even regardless of that, change is sometimes uncomfortable, and you only realize it was good when you're on the other side of it. Yeah. And what I love about this conversation with Sam is you would be amazed at how many pockets in our society there are that have this implicit and explicit bias just built into them. And you don't think about it because you're not part of that culture, or you don't think about it because that version of art or sports is not big for you. But we're going to talk about sports. We're going to talk about art. We're going to talk about the South. We're going to talk about all these little elements, interracial families and all this stuff that is really, really relevant, because until we equalize as many systems, as many areas of life as we can, we're still going to keep having this issue come up.
Yep. Yeah. Sam is just such a bright light. We know him personally, but he's an inspiration to so many, and he's fighting the good fight. We talk about racism in America versus in Australia. He talks about struggles he had in different parts of the States. And surprisingly, he was more discriminated against in Los Angeles than he was in the deep, deep South.
Yeah. And that shows some of the unexpected elements, right? That's why we're sharing these stories. Is it's not always as clear cut as you think. It's not like, oh, well, he went to LA and there everything must have been fine, but in the South it was painful.
Opposite.
Listen to the specifics of what happens, because that'll help us all understand what we really have to fight here.
Yeah. And just share anything, go to your Instagram, your Facebook, wherever you listen to podcasts, give us a review. The reviews keep us going. And Again, if we read it on air, you get a special care package, but also DM us, send us, engage with us on Ignited's on Ignited's Instagram, tag DNI and Sam, and let us know what was poignant for you, what stood out for you. It means the world to us, and I know it'll mean the world to Sam too. Absolutely. And they do have a petition to fight some of these issues that they're talking about, so we'll have a link for that in your show notes. Love you all so much. See you on the other side. This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com. You know, for me, as soon as we started talking about having this conversation, it seemed like this one would be a little bit different for me personally, because I know you better than some of the other people that we've talked to about this general topic, but even more so because I've been there at least one time when you were blatantly discriminated for being black, like just blatantly, right? Like, there was a group of 8 of us who were trying to go out. It was one of those Hollywood clubs where you had to wait in line. So we did the thing that I hate doing, and we waited in line in the freaking Hollywood club. And then we all got in. All of us got in, and I look back and you're not there. And I'm like, where the fuck is Sam? So I try to go out. Yeah, our entire group, right? Our entire
group got in. We were the only one that didn't get in. I almost want to, it's Argyle is the name of the club, and I'm going to fucking call it out just because why the fuck not? So I turn back to look, and there's a bouncer standing on the inside, and I go, hey, my friend's still out there. I just want to make sure he's getting in. And I open the door, and he like pulls me back because you're not allowed to go back or whatever. And we're just standing there, and the bouncer's just like doesn't care at all. So I fight. Sophie, I think you were there standing right next to me. So I'm fighting with the bouncer. I'm like, bro, my friend is out there. You're not just leaving him out there. You just let our whole group in. So I'm fighting with this guy. I'm becoming pretty distraught and mad at this point. And
Understandably.
Then 2 of them kick us out. Well, they kicked me out, but the rest of the group followed me. So they literally lift me and take me outside. And then if you remember, I came back around to where the line was, and I just started pitching out.
I do.
The bouncer was standing in front of me like, fuck you guys.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about that.
And so I was standing there and got so pissed. I can't, like, I have to imagine that's not the only time something like that has happened in your life. But it was so deeply upsetting to see the separation. It was like, I'm so undermining the real South African experience right now, but it was like watching apartheid happen in my friend group. Like, there was no reason for them not to let you in the moment.
No different from anyone else. It's just, it's absurd. I know, I totally forgot about that. Oh my God. And it's like to even think about times when maybe I was discriminated against and I didn't even realize it. Like, I don't even think in that moment it dawned on me. But yeah, you know what I mean? It's just, because for me, it's hard. We can talk about this as well, but I don't even, think about those kind of things as a person. And I don't think a lot of people, like, from hearing from a lot of my friends who like heard my story or watched the video I posted, they're like, oh my gosh, like I've never even I never even thought like that you're going through this experience or that. I'm like, because that doesn't even cross your mind, because you don't have to think that because because of the color of my skin that my experience should be different or it is different. Like that's just who we are as people. We just assume that everyone around us has an equal and fair life. And yeah, it's really sad. That's not the fact of the matter. But anyway, we'll get into it. We'll save it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was just, I mean, that's to me, it was so different. A lot of times when we have these conversations, I need to like ask because I don't know what it's like. But then that time I got to just see it so blatantly. And if we can just review this for a second. So you're in Australia right now. We were talking about how Australia is like locked down its borders, so nobody's coming in because of Corona. But you moved out there for your partner and because you dance and you wanted to come out and dance in Australia, right? Now we were talking to Alex, our friend, who connected us together years ago. But in a weird way, you have, I don't know, like, is it 3 or 4 different groups that you can get discriminated against in one person?
Basically. Exactly. Like, it's just, I know. How did I get so lucky in that regard?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that, and you're Black. And how long have you been dancing? How long have you been doing ballet?
I've been doing ballet since I was 7. So, oh God, I don't know, what's that, 15 years, something like that. 16 years. Yeah.
And you're gay.
Yeah.
So I've got to like just literally, we're all about radical transparency, right? So for you, you were just saying a second ago, I go through my life and I don't even recognize sometimes how these things are impacting me. But do times like this make it more like front and center? Is it something that's always in the back of your mind? Like, I just wonder sometimes what's the experience like?
I think in times like this, it's when I go back and I start to play through different instances and experiences that I have had, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this was so unfair, that was so unfair, this conversation was really uncomfortable, or I really do, I go back through over certain situations, and even there are times when I could be with someone and they may slip in like a slight racial slur or microaggression, and I may not even respond to it, but it does stick in the back of my head, and even those kind of things start to play in my head as well. Like, it just takes kind of someone saying one really ridiculous comment that will just always stick with you. And I think that was a culmination as to all the emotions I've been feeling recently, and to voice my opinion, especially in one of my more important communities, the dance community, just because Alex and I have been having a lot of conversations, and she's one of my best friends, so she's lived so much of my experience with me as a professional, and especially all this experience coming over here to Australia. And it was really sad because I did so much work with the community here and just reaching out. And, I realized very early on that there were a lot of issues, a lot of irregularities with the system itself, and versus the American like dance community that I'm used to. And immediately I just kind of hit the ground running and was like, I gotta fix this. But I never thought that my race would ever pose an issue in me, like, moving towards a resolution. And and it wasn't until probably, actually, because I started coming over here about 1.5 years ago, so it wasn't until November of this year that my dad kind of, he said, I really think that you're being discriminated against, and that, you're going through some things based off of the color of your skin. And it didn't even, because that's something that, like I've said, it doesn't even faze me, and maybe because I have so many amazing friends like you guys, and people who just, it's not even, we don't even recognize it as it being a distinct difference, like the color of my skin, seriously. But then I think my dad was right, and that's when my opinion on things started to change a lot. The way that people were thinking and acting, it started to change in my head, and why certain scenarios played out a certain way versus how I thought they should have played out very easily, and the way things were said to me as well. So it's just been times like this, it's really sad to say, but we've seen this Black Lives Matter movement happen several times recently. Hopefully this is the most transformative time, which seems like it is.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just, you kind of go back and you reflect over just different adversities you'd gone through, whether it's not in my career, but also just in life and in general. And it can be really traumatizing, but at the same time, for me, it can be really uplifting because I don't want that to happen to me or to anybody else ever again. So that's why I've also chosen to be so outspoken this time and really use my voice and, let other people know, what my story is, but then, how we can move forward. And I think that's so important because I have a lot of friends that are not Black, or I have Black and brown friends, but I also have a lot of white friends. And in my white friend groups, I find myself being the only person of color. So I think it's interesting because they're also able to hear. I think a lot of times people are listening and they're hearing these beautiful stories, but they're like, how does that really, it doesn't really affect me, or it doesn't really, I can't really recognize that, or, I can't relate to what they're saying. But, I think by me speaking up and having so many friends who might also feel that way, it's been really eye-opening for them as well, because they're like, okay, Sam is really important to me. This actually does affect him, like this is a problem that he has, even though he hasn't been vocal about it ever. And he is hurting and he is sad. And, what can I do better in my community? So just, yeah, sorry, that was kind of a roundabout way to answer that question. But yeah, this whole time kind of really creates a lot of interesting and uncomfortable conversations, but brings up a lot of difficult memories as well.
Yeah. I have tons of friends right now that are Black, and they're saying the same thing. I don't know if it's like, when did you move to LA? I
moved to LA in 2014.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of people that grew up around here have been here in their adult lives. In some ways I look at the city and I think of it as so integrated, and in other ways I think of it, and maybe it's just the wellness field. It might just be my blind spots. There's other times that I look at the city and I'm like, oh, it's not integrated at all. It's so segregated. And it's just so funny. Like I look at, acting and modeling and I think like, oh, it's so diverse. But then it's like we see what we want to see.
Yeah.
Because I can equally defend both sides.
Right.
And a lot of friends, like one of my best friends who's a trainer, he's like been here. We've been talking nonstop for 3 weeks. And he's just like, this is the first time I've ever spoken publicly about my skin color. And he's in his 30s and he's like, this is the first time that I've ever. So he's going through his own, like, never mind what you are probably going through inside, but then to have like this going out in the world, and then to kind of come out publicly talking about these issues that you've never had really a conversation about publicly before, like, and similar to some of my white friends that have never spoken politically on social media, and they have 500,000 followers, and we're all like, let's hear your voice here. And they're like, I'm not an activist. Who am I to speak on these topics? And it's like, who are you not to? Like, we all need to do this. And so it's so beautiful to hear that trickle effect of like, you're sharing from your heart and you're affecting so many. And we're all trying to do our best to share, even if we don't know what to say. Just to bring awareness to it so that this doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And as we can see with a lot of the riots and the uprisings, and the big push on social media, it seems like hopefully this is really getting through to a lot of people and important organizations, companies, And I think honestly, after this whole movement, let's say whenever it does phase out, quote unquote, or like the hype of it all, I think we are going to see a different outcome. I think that people who show up and show out, it will be very obvious, and those that don't, it will also be very obvious. And then I think that that states its stance, and it'll be really telling to see. Actually, really interesting if I'm being honest, because everyone's been so vocal during this time, and if you haven't, then that says one thing. And then if you start to sit back, and when things go back to normal or back to our reality, and we still see people showing up and showing out or really trying to make change, it'll be incredibly eye-opening, I think.
Tell me more about your adoption. Were you adopted
Yes.
I met your dad and I don't even remember if he was black or white. And again, that's my own blind spot. I just remember meeting your dad in the street. I don't even remember what color he was, and like, that's just an honest, ignorant maybe, but like, I just remember meeting him and him being warm.
Yeah. Oh my God. That was the first time Alex met him too. Yeah. I was adopted when I was 2 days old, in Montgomery, Alabama. And if you guys know Montgomery, Alabama, you're like, for a white family to be adopting a black baby, that is transcendent, in 1996. But yeah, they're just my family. They're just beautiful people. And then I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. So that's just, it's a few hours away from Montgomery. And and I lived there until I was 14. And then I moved to New York. Yeah. So that's kind of about the adoption.
What was that like growing up in the South, in like the South, growing up as a black child
in a white family?
Yeah, it was actually really beautiful, I think, because my family is just so accepting and so progressive, and Birmingham itself is really great in that there is a good bit of culture. We have a pretty good melting pot of people from different nationalities, actually, and Birmingham is where it's those streets that we learned about in school. That some people learn about in school, like those were my streets. That was my neighborhood, my city. Where the civil rights movement took place and Martin Luther King and everything. So it's really great because I think Birmingham has definitely seen it shift, and especially in this time as well, I look back and I see how ahead they are from the other cities. But it was really great. I mean, I was surrounded by a lot of art and a lot of culture, and it's interesting because, there were times when I'd be out with my family, like my grandmother, who's white, and she's one of my best friends. And I just we go grocery shopping or just shopping, and like we're together, and someone might say, "Oh, it's so nice to have like a young man helping you," and yada, yada. Or just like, "Oh, what a nice young man this is. Like, is he your friend?" And she's like, "This is my grandson," or things like that would happen. And there was one horrific event. I remember when I was younger, and my dad and I were at a football game, and he was taking me to the bathroom, and this woman thought that he was trying to kidnap me. And of course, when I think I was 4 or 5, and he starts yelling at this woman, and I start crying and getting in hysterics, and I think that was a pretty horrific experience. So I mean, I'm sure there were some small instances like that, where it was a bit shocking, I'm sure, for people in Birmingham to see a little white. Sorry.
So what I'm hearing is that the experiences were almost, because growing up in a white family, it was almost like the assumption that you would be separate was a more common experience than really feeling kind of like looked down upon because of your color. But instead it was like, which I could understand, right? It's like we haven't, for better or worse, we haven't really integrated the concept, and that shows the segregation Sophie was mentioning before, right? We can look at the integration, we can look at the other side, and mixed race families are almost kind of I'll say a relative anomaly. And so what I'm hearing is that growing up, that's something you would run into, or kind of people would assume, even when you were with your family, they would assume this isn't your family, and therefore would kind of make
Yeah.
assumptions.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it. We would just experiencing so many issues like I wouldn't say so many, but several issues like that growing up. And it was interesting to me. I was like, because to me, it's just they're just my family. But I guess to a stranger, it's two different people sitting at a dinner table, and the waiter coming up and asking, "Is this a Big Brothers Big Sisters program?" Like, just it's like, why is that even posing a question? But I mean, I don't even know if that really has a reflection. It was a reflection of Birmingham as a whole. It could just be that would probably happen. That might even happen anywhere. I don't think that people just would even recognize, that we could be family members. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it was just, I don't know, it was really great. I went to a beautiful art school when I was younger, which just, I think, helped me so much as a person. Alabama School of Fine Arts. I found myself a lot there. And I was able to dive more into dance with that. And at the school, we had, there was theater arts, there was music, there was math and science, which is an art, but they had math and science, they had music, they had creative writing, visual arts. It was incredible. So I went to school with all these kids who practice all these different mediums in their art forms. And it was just, and I got to learn from them, and they would come and learn from us. And it was just, yeah, I'm really happy that I got to grow up in Birmingham.
And you started ballet when you were 7.
Mm-hmm.
Who initiated that?
I was in a program at the local Jewish community center called Joseph and His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And someone, yeah, it's like this little musical. And I was like the color blue. I don't know what I was. I had like this blue t-shirt. And this woman came and pointed me out and said to my dad, she said, you should bring your son to audition for my daughter's ballet school. And he was like, okay, sure. And so then I enrolled into the school, and it was just kind of like, another after school activity at that age. I did swimming, I did baseball, soccer, I guess theater. And then throughout the years, like, because ballet is an art form, you start to, develop it more and more, and you have to work on it and improve. Throughout the years, those other things would start to dwindle out. And baseball, I love baseball. So I was in there till the end, as long as I could be. And then I had to make that kind of final decision. But yeah, then you start taking ballet every single day as you get older. So I think about like 10 or 11 is where I really started to get more serious. And then 12, I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing for my career for the rest of my life. Like at 12, buckling down. Yeah. So that was kind of my start to it. And I started at the Alabama School of Fine Arts in their preparatory program. And then I got accepted into their middle school. So they have a middle school and a high school. So I got accepted into the middle school, which is where you go and you take dance during the day, and then also your academics, and then dance and academics. And yeah.
Wow. What a beautiful childhood.
I love the idea of knowing what I want to do when I'm 12.
Yeah.
I still barely know what I want to do. I mean, there's so many questions and so many just thoughts that I have. First of all, in a way, it's kind of like funny. When we started this conversation, I was feeling like maybe belonging to all these separate groups would make things harder. But in some way, I feel like it's almost as if it created this really interesting, almost like a unicorn existence, right? It's like, and so you just, between all these different things that could have made you separate from others, you almost had to come up with a way of integrating and just finding really your place where you're comfortable. Because again, this is I'm about to say something that totally shows my prejudice about what it must be like living in the South. But I'm assuming that growing up, first of all, as a boy who plays baseball and also dances ballet, and then chooses ballet instead of sports, and I don't know if you were out already at that point, but I'm almost kind of seeing through this conversation, Sam, that the way you had to gradually be really like strong and certain in what you wanted to do. Because I assume, again, total assumptions, you can tell me I'm 100% wrong, but I assume there are not a lot of like young boys who are Black who are doing ballet in Alabama.
Yeah, no, I think I would probably be one of the only ones, especially at that time. But I mean, I never felt, if I'm being honest, I never felt any pushback from anyone in our
Love it.
community or anyone in my family. And not that, I don't even think it was really hidden from me, because everyone in my family, at least, is pretty open, including my grandparents and everything. So yeah, I don't know. And my grandfather is actually the one who owned the baseball. He had this like baseball league thing that he owned, and then like there's a kids portion, and so I was in that. So I mean, he was always supportive, and yeah,
Wow.
he's the one that told me, you decide whatever you want to do. Like, we're always going to be here to support you. And I was like, oh, but I love baseball, I love this. And,
Wow.
yeah, so I don't know. I got really lucky, I think, that I was able to be in this
Beautiful.
beautiful melting pot. Yeah, coming from so many different groups as well. And then, yeah, when I was 14, I moved to New York and I continued my training there. So my family stayed, but I moved to New York and I lived in a dorm at Lincoln Center. And yeah, that's kind of where my ballet career really took its huge shift. Obviously, being in New York, I just knew that, well, I was also told and had been mentored, and, that it was not going to happen for me if I was staying in Alabama, and that I was ready to go to New York. Like, the right people felt that I was ready. And so, yeah, I moved there and I trained there for 4 years at the School of American Ballet, which was incredible. And I went to another kind of art school, professional children's school, which I think these schools were really beneficial because, yeah, at my school, it's a private school in the Upper West Side, but there were kids who were working professionals like I was at such a young age, who were models and actors and, musicians and Olympians. We had some Olympians and race car drivers. So just like being around that environment still, like just hearing people who are also so passionate about what they do and feeling you connect, because sometimes you don't, well, I know for sure, like I would not connect with the ordinary high school jock or cheerleader. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Then they're like 8 to 3 schedule. Like, that's just not who I am. So it was amazing that I was able to grow up constantly
Mm.
around these other kids who were also, whose passion was also up there with their academics, like up there at the forefront. And it was incredible. And it was great because I wasn't just surrounded by dancers as well. I was surrounded by other people. So I was able
Mm.
to pull, different inspiration from them, and hear different insights from them in their different media.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm hearing that you were super supported, but it
Mhm.
doesn't sound like you were necessarily like, was there one person, like, were your parents really forceful with, like, this is
Mm,
your path? No, it sounds like it
mm,
was just like the universe and your environments and your
mhm,
community just reinforcing
mhm,
energetically
mhm,
what
mhm,
you received what they were putting
mhm.
out there, which is,
Yeah,
this is your gift.
yeah,
And if you lean in, we're going to continue to support this energy. And it just
yeah,
sounds like it continued to grow and grow.
yeah.
I'm interested, like, just from a parent standpoint, we're introducing our kids to so many amazing things, and they go to a Waldorf school, which is very
Mhm,
creative.
mhm.
Um, and, it does sound like the opportunities that you were given really helped shape you. Like, you going to a regular public school, I don't know that you would have come out like this.
Nope. I don't think I would have either.
It's beautiful, and I think like that it makes me just feel very like tender-hearted about our own children and like
Mhm,
pushing. Like, I remember being in the valley at our old house where you
mhm,
came a few times, and we went to the local elementary school
mhm,
for pre-K for
mhm,
Kai, who's our
mhm.
oldest. He's almost 10 now. I cried the entire orientation. I was
Wow,
embarrassing to a G. I kept
really?
leaving the room
Oh my god.
because I was like, this is not the fit for our child. This is
Okay.
not, Kai cannot grow up in this environment.
Yeah, wow.
He's just not a good fit for this. And I
Mhm,
went outside and I called a local Waldorf school, because since he was in my belly, I knew that
mhm.
was just, I didn't go to Waldorf school. I don't even have Waldorf friends that
Right,
went to school.
right.
There just was, I got those signs from the universe,
Wow.
and listen. And so I left the orientation and sat in one of those little like elementary school tables and called the local Waldorf school, which was like, I don't know, $40,000 a year.
Right.
We couldn't afford that.
Right.
Like we were barely handling the bills at that point.
Yeah.
And I called and I said, do you have scholarships? I set up a meeting, and we didn't end up going to that school, but it opened the door to the schools they're in now, which is a public Waldorf school, which I didn't even know it existed. So
Okay.
just following intuition as a parent and listening and,
but also being, I hear a lot of open-mindedness in your history, right? Like there's almost, there are all these different phases of which somebody would have said, that's too far, and try to like push you back into, and I'm putting normal in air quotes, but push you back towards the standard of what was happening around. And that could have created real friction and discomfort, but that's so beautiful that you didn't end up there. I want to take it to this next place, because you mentioned this when we first started talking. I love talking about the kumbaya version of how this is all great, but here you are, you've been in the US for a while, then you moved to Australia, and you hit like this roadblock. And again, you're not a guy who gives up. Like, look at the history. And we didn't even mention you have a clothing line, or you're an entrepreneur. Like, you do a lot. So it wasn't you're hitting walls. And then a conversation with your dad, he goes, I think this might be discrimination. How do you feel? I know you and Alex are working on this and you have a lot of opinions on it. How do you feel the dance world is dealing with Black Lives Matters or race issues in general?
Yeah, this was a loaded one because, I was fortunate enough. I was very fortunate enough to really have such a transformative experience for myself growing up in New York. And I think that is, like, honestly, this sounds crazy. And I look at my students, because I teach ballet today. I would never send a kid away at 14. That is so young. But for me, it was the right thing to do. And it's just how I found myself. And I was just, immersed. And I remember, I can say this now, but I couldn't say it when I was in school. I remember like escaping our zones, and I would just go down to Soho or into Brooklyn by myself and just explore and be surrounded by so many different people from different walks of life. And I just grew as a person just from that experience, like walking the streets and looking and seeing this, or like seeing someone yell and do that, or, like in New York, when you're just surrounded by waves of beautiful people, it's just, it's healing. It's educational, that experience in and of itself. So, and I was really lucky in that I grew up in the School of American Ballet, where I didn't really feel like I was tokenized. And I felt like I was really pushed to be my best self and be the best dancer that I can be, just because that's the goal. It's America's best ballet school. So that's why I was there. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to show that I could be the best that I could be. And sadly, it wasn't until my professional career that I started to realize, when I was working in Los Angeles, I started to realize that there were a lot of issues that I was going to have to overcome, just based off the color of my skin. Not even because of my technique, not because of my ability, because I was ready. I'd been in this great school. I'd gone to great summer programs, and had just amazing training throughout my life. And so here I was presenting myself to the professional world. And then I was just like, boom, roadblock. So it was totally until my professional career that I really realized how bad the issue was with Blacks in ballet. And I remember
that sucks.
No,
that's
it's horrible.
terrible, because it's like you train and you feel accepted and everything is fine. And then when it comes time to actually make it your life, you go, oh shit. It seemed okay in school, but now there's an issue. Alex showed us that movie, The Black Ballerina.
Misty Copeland.
And
was she?
Well, she's in it. Misty Copeland is there, like in the end, but it talks about all the way from the beginning of ballet, and sort of I'll say the near complete exclusion initially of any Black dancers, and then once Black dancers were incorporated, they took on like little roles and side roles, and Misty Copeland that you just mentioned is kind of one of the only Black dancers who's ever been able to reach, like prime roles in a principal role in a ballet. And one of the things that I heard that really stuck with me, and we sat with the kids and Alex was there and we were kind of explaining it to them as the whole movie was going on. This one dancer says something that was really poignant, and she says she left dancing. She's like, I don't know, she waits tables now, whatever I don't remember the exact role. I think she's waiting tables now, but she was saying the problem was I would go to these auditions time after time, and when I would leave, I wouldn't know if I didn't get the role because I wasn't good enough or I didn't work hard enough or I was black, which is even worse than knowing you didn't get it because you were black, because it's like, shit, am I just supposed to work harder? Because I mean, obviously everybody knows this who's ever watched ballet or ever like heard about ballet or whatever. Ballet is a really tough industry anyway. Like if you're a white female, well, I guess white male ballerinas are like it's easier because there's not as many of them, but it's a tough job even without being discriminated against. So then when you don't get the role, you just, what she said was so hurtful. It was like, I don't even know if it's because I'm not good or because the color of my skin, and nobody will tell you because nobody's going to say, oh, well, I'm not going to give you because you're black.
Just like you just getting into the club. No, when Adi went outside and said, why isn't our friend in here? He's like, he'll come in. Yeah. Why did 7 of us get in who have white skin and our one black friend didn't get in?
Ridiculous.
Why? Yeah. Just a coincidence, man. Like, absolutely not.
So stupid. And it's I mean, it's shocking. It's crazy. And it's honestly disappointing because I think for me, I realized I left the company I was in dancing with in Los Angeles because I was going through a lot of issues with discrimination. And, it wasn't a good fit for me. Energetically, it was not working out. And I tried for 4 years to push and push and push. And I would have meetings and discussions. And like you said, it's those kind of things where people won't tell you face to face what's really going on. When it's obvious, when I'm walking down the hallway, I'm telling the director, hi, how are you? How's your morning? And they go, just turn their head and ignore you. So it's like that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing where I would work really hard. I would give myself extra classes. I'd go to the student classes, even though it's professional, just trying to prove like I'm here. I want to do this. I will constantly improve. And it just wasn't good enough. And then finally, and again, honestly, it was my dad who said, this is not working out for you. I don't want to see you like this. I would be in tears, you guys, like every single day. I remember my last year, it was horrendous. And the last year that I danced with the company in Los Angeles, I was casted in this horrible role, which needs to be taken out of the production. But it was this fat suit character. Dancers who aren't of color who do it have to put on this orange face thing. There's like a mustache. It was just, and I was casted almost every single show for it. And I would go to my dressing room and I would just cry. I would just sob and I wouldn't even watch my friends on stage because it was mortifying. And so I had to leave because of that, because it just wasn't working out for me. I didn't have another job planned. I didn't have another job to go to after that, or like queued up, but I just knew that this was not like, this was not it. Like for me, and I remember just leaving and just like so much weight being lifted off of me. And and that was really where I was like, okay, we have a lot of work to do. The dance community has got to do better. And I mean, this has been a huge conversation that Alex and I have been talking about recently, and doing a lot of work with. And I think people are listening, as we're starting to see on Instagram, the companies who've been speaking up and they know that they're not doing enough or what they are doing isn't good enough. And a lot of it is surface level. I was in a really great conversation with about 60 actually, Black dancers from around the world, so from different companies, in England and Germany and the United States, obviously, and Brazil and South Africa. But we were talking about this whole thing because it's been such a hot topic for honestly like the past few years, like diversity and inclusion, but what does it really mean to actually put it into action? So, we see these companies and they're promoting these dancers, but they're putting them, as Aurora and the Sleeping Beauty, but then they aren't actually having the dancer being casted to learn that role. So you're trying to sell tickets to reach a certain demographic. Whoa. The demographics coming to the show, but they aren't seeing themselves represented on stage. So it's like, oh yeah. So they're
using it to advertise, but not actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
So this is, kind of it's accumulation of things as to what's really led to, I think, this this form of self-expression that we've all reached, this form of not, I don't want to say anger, but just I don't know, maybe it is anger. Maybe anger, frustration.
Yeah.
I think at some point, and this is maybe important point to bring this up, like a lot of people, white people, but a lot of people, when this was all going on, they're like, yeah, but why are people getting so angry and rioting and looting? And I'm like, what would you feel like if this keeps happening for hundreds of fucking years? Like, at what point do you stop just walking and go, come on, guys, let's change this?
Yeah.
And for you, and again, this is an example within a niche, which I think is actually important because I don't know the average demographics of who goes to see ballet, but my guess is that if companies are using Black dancers in advertisements and roles to try to get that demographic to come in and watch, then there might be a shift in there. But it's this game, right? The game is this. The industries, the government, the organizations have a role in normalizing certain things. We know this in the media, right? For dozens and dozens of years, Black characters were shady characters. They were the evil guy. They were the one you couldn't trust. They were the drug dealers, the murderers, robbers. Like that was the role. And not only did that support the existing thought about who Black people were, but it also helped reinforce it. So it did both.
Right.
It said, hey, we're going to show you what you're comfortable with, but we're also going to make sure that we're not going to take you outside of that zone.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is happening maybe, and I'm seeing you and Alex in the petition, and we'll have a link to the petition and all that stuff in here. But what I'm seeing you talking about with these other dancers is that there's this weird thing that's happening right now, which is everybody's talking about the change, but for the people inside the companies, they're not actually seeing any change. It's just, well, everybody knows you can't be outwardly racist now, so you can't say well, we're a white only ballet company.
It's on our posters. There's a Black person on our posters. That's craziness.
But then the indoctrination within the actual choreography and the actual casting and the actual maybe the actual idea of what the directors and the producers and the choreographers have of, I'm putting this again in air quotes, of what a ballet dancer looks like is still rooted in that old racist sort of ideal.
Totally, it is. And like I actually mentioned in my video, I had this conversation because so after I came to Australia, the first one of the first times I took class with the company here, I honestly felt like a fly in a cup of milk. And, and it was interesting because in the same token, I was like, I need to be proud of myself and, that I've made it into this room and proud that I am a person of color and I am in this room. And, how many, and also I was like, how many people that of color have danced in this room ever? Probably I'm one of maybe two in like all of this country's history. Yeah. So there was that. But at the same time, I was like, okay, now we have to hit the ground running. There's so much work to be done. So I actually presented myself to several different arts organizations with this plan that in order to kind of help with the diversity and inclusion sector in these Australian dance companies, can we come up with a strategy where I will already potentially be hired with a salary in hand, a patron in hand, someone who's here to sponsor me, so the company doesn't have to worry about that, so that it's just up to the company to provide me with a job. And so I met with this director of this arts organization who does stuff like that, funding for artists, and he was really he's a really lovely guy. But yeah, like we had this conversation and he said, ballet was created for a certain type of person and it was envisioned to be danced by a certain type of person. And he said this to my face and I was like, okay. And then I said, you know what? Because in my mind, I said, it's really, I'm not angry right now. And people message me like, oh my God, you must have been so angry when this guy said this to you. And I said, no. I wasn't angry, honestly. I was just sad. because I was sad that he thinks it's okay, first of all, to say that to someone who is a professional ballet dancer. And second of all, it's sad that this is just what's going on in his mind, that he thinks this is how the reality is. And so
Yeah.
I thought that either this is an educational experience for him. Like, he's probably never had a Black classical ballet dancer in his office ever. So I'm like, so he can leave this room with a new mindset, or he can leave the room with the same mindset he had coming in here. So I was like, I'm going to try to change his mindset. So we talked it out, we talked it through, and I said, I'm a classical ballet dancer. It's 2019, and I'm Black, and I do classical ballet. I do contemporary, but I'm mainly a classical ballet dancer. And yet by the end of it, he was like, yes, like, I want to help you. Let's come up with some funding ideas. Like, I would love to see about different patrons that could, support you. But for me, it's really sad because it's us, not that we're smaller people, but we aren't these leaders of these major organizations making these decisions. And I hate that it's taking me having to speak up, or like Alex having to write a petition, or these dancers, me waking up at 4:30 in the morning to have a Zoom with 60 dancers around the world to talk about how we can create change within our own communities and our own companies. Like, why is it up to us? Why is it not these directors making $500,000 a year? Why is it not these board members? Why is it us? Not that we're smaller people, but just people who normally wouldn't be in the place to make that decision. But maybe it's also empowering that we're able.
I feel like this is a similar conversation to the Hollywood conversation that's been happening for the last 5 to 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole Oscar so white kind of a thing. And
yes.
And this is, this is maybe a real coming to terms. I didn't even think about this before we started this, but a real coming to terms for society at large with these concepts that we have about the way things should be, period, point blank. Like, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I wonder what it was like when you had, like, initial painting was very realist, right? You painted exactly what was in front of you. You tried to get it exactly that way. And then, like, Impressionism came on and people said, that's not drawing. That's not painting. And somebody had to persuade them to go, no, this is still art. I can paint the other way, but look. And when you said ballet was meant for a certain kind of person, it's so interesting because even just saying that takes you back to the moment where ballet was kind of invented.
Mm-hmm.
And is it originally Russian? I have no idea.
Like France and Italian courts, French and Italian courts. Mm-hmm.
So you look at where the stuff was invented, and sure, there were not a lot of African dancers at the time, like joining, but the world evolves,
exactly.
Right? Music was also classical only, but now people listen to all different kinds of music. So it's like, this idea, but actually, you said it, and I just want to repeat it. I love that the guy had the balls to say it to you, because I do still believe that knowing is better, because then you can have the conversation.
Right.
If he doesn't say it to you and he says, oh yeah, that's a great idea, but as soon as you leave, he goes, that's never going to fucking happen because ballet is for white European skinny people.
Right.
Then if he doesn't say it to you, then there's no room for the change. But you took on the mantle and you kind of said, okay, this is his opinion. I could just leave here pissed, or I can have the conversation with him.
Yeah. And totally. It was very interesting, to say the least.
I want to see if you can answer this. We're finishing up our time. We have 5 questions we ask everyone, but in your mind, in your perspective, from everything that you've been going through your whole life and in the last few weeks, how can white people,
allies,
how can we, I don't even know if we can consider ourselves allies yet. I don't know if we can. We're still learning and growing, but how can we be better allies, or how do you see our role in this?
I think it's beautiful that you guys are able to use your platform, or anybody who has a platform or a voice or any bit of social media, or it's on social media, just using that to let Black voices be heard. And I think what's also really important, not only for allies, but everyone in general, just take this as an opportunity to learn something and to educate yourself, and to also uneducate yourself in some ways. And even me, I'm learning so much about the culture here, the indigenous people and how they were treated by Australian settlers, English settlers. And it's just, I think, right now, especially during this time, just really listening and sharing stories. Like, I've been sharing so many different stories that I've heard from other Black dancers. And, I've had a lot of kids come to me and tell me their stories, or former students, and just listening and just taking it all in. And because it's all about, experiences, because we don't have every single experience that everybody's had, but it's about knowing that one person's had such a horrible experience, honestly, for me, is enough. And, then to hear that there are so many more. And so it's like listening to those experiences and then figuring out how we can move forward as a whole. So then also in our own communities, like just being like communities that don't have a heavy Black presence, speaking up. So when you hear injustice or hear of things that you just know are not right, speaking up and saying, hey, that's not okay. Or like, let's take a step back, or like, no, like, I'm sorry, but we can't be friends anymore if that's how you're going to feel or that's how you're going to think. So just also standing up in our own sectors where there may not be as many people of color. I think is important as well.
Definitely losing a lot of friends right now.
Oh no, me too, girl. Don't worry. It's all right. I mean,
it's a cleansing. Bye-bye.
It is. Yep.
So we're going to it's rapid fire, but you can take as long as you want. And, just there's probably more than one answer for these. So just from your heart. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Stay true to yourself and keep your integrity.
Yes. What about your proudest moment?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Okay, so I have two. So proudest moment would be stepping on stage in one of my dream roles, which is the Cavalier and the Nutcracker. Just phenomenal. Love that. I had a beautiful partner I danced with. Just that was a proud moment. And then, finally getting my Australian visa, because I did it all on my own and found an attorney, saved $11,000.
Oh my God.
Just worked really hard to get all of that done. And I recently received the official visa, I think 3 weeks ago. But just going through that whole process, the whole moving process. And so those are kind of my two proudest moments, just because they both required a lot of hard work.
I love it, man. Wow. On the flip side of that, what has been one of your hardest moments?
My hardest moments. Hardest moments would have been living in Los Angeles and dancing with the company that I danced with. Because I was so happy. My social life, like you guys know, I was so fulfilled with that. I had amazing friends and a beautiful home and a great community. And, I love my coworkers. But then at the same time, I was battling this internal conflict with myself as to who I was, where I fit in my career, why I constantly felt less than. And that was definitely my hardest moment, being just in that space, just that space of my life. Even like looking back, it's kind of traumatic for me. And I still haven't processed a lot of those things. And
Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
So in that, I mean, actually, there's probably a few different angles of your life where this next question matters. You work hard physically. Ballet is an incredibly demanding sport. There's also all these other aspects of your specific experience in it that we've been talking about. Do you have a self-care routine, a way to take care of yourself, body, spirit, everything that is like non-negotiable that helps you get through everything?
Oh my gosh, totally. I haven't been keeping to it lately because I've been doing so much like PR, press, or whatever, with all this stuff. But just I don't know. I find it really important. I actually really don't like Instagram or social media, and Alex knows this. Like, I will just delete the app altogether, and it gives me anxiety. But just and my phone in general. Some days I'll just leave my phone at home. For me personally, just because it stresses me out. I can be really sensitive with those types of things. So my routine usually is to not look at my phone in the morning. I'll start the day. I've been doing meditation. I was in quarantine for 2 weeks, so I did a lot of meditation. Going into the studio when I can, because I'm really lucky to have a space that I can go to. And so giving myself a ballet class is really meditative for me as well. When I'm able to express myself and physically sweat. But it's so important, and eating well, just eating really good food. Also just great nourishing food. It changes your life. So I don't know, just really taking care of yourself in times like this, especially, is important. Taking a step back when things can be pretty full on. But yeah.
I love it.
So our podcast is called Ignited. What ignites you?
Oh my gosh, what ignites me right now? What ignites me is the future. So I'm a teacher, so seeing my kids several times a week and just seeing their growth and seeing the potential and hearing how smart they are and learning from them. And they're some of the first people to comment on the story, the video that I posted, and just reading their comments. Oh my gosh, they're so smart and they're so progressive, and seeing my little cousins and like all of their posts about, this time in Black Lives Matter. The future ignites me. Just knowing that it's bright and that it will be so different from the present is exciting, and seeing the talent that my young students have. So that's kind of up to me as well. Why I have been so outspoken during these past few weeks is just because I want to make sure that they don't ever have to go through anything that I've gone through. So they are like my driving force right now.
Thank you so much. We're going to leave leave your video, leave the link to your clothing line and more in the show notes. So go check that out, you guys. And thank you, Sam. What's your Instagram handle? It's
at Sam Akins.
Okay. So everyone go tell us what your favorite part to this episode was, your aha moment, something that stuck with you, and tag all of us. Sam, his last name is Akins, and Ignited, and Adi and I, and we'll reshare. Thank you so much, Sam. We love you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Sam.
I love you
so
guys
many
too.
kisses.
Thank you for having me.
We can't wait to follow the progress over there and see you break through that barrier.
Yes, come over here. Hopefully you can come and watch me perform one day.
We would love that.
Love it.
We would love that. Bye, babe.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.